Government cannot strip gun rights from people simply because they have a history of illegal drug use. The decision focusing on a case involving a Texas gun owner who used marijuana several times a week. Senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer, who covers the Supreme Court for us, joins us now. All right, break down the ruling for us.
Well, for decades, Kira, it has been illegal in this country to own a gun if you're a drug addict or if you use illegally controlled substances for any period of time. That means marijuana users. 40 states have legalized it in some form, but the Supreme Court today said that that law is too broad. It's unconstitutional in a rollback of this long-standing ban on guns for anyone who uses a controlled substance. In effect, you cannot be denied a gun simply because you use marijuana. It was a win for this guy from Texas who was prosecuted simply because he had a gun in his house. He also had some marijuana in his house. He wasn't intoxicated. He wasn't holding the gun, but the feds went after him. They prosecute about 300 cases a year using this law. And the Supreme Court today, in this opinion by Justice Neil Gorsuch, said that's unconstitutional. It is okay to use marijuana, which they likened to alcohol, and there has to be another crime. You have to be found dangerous of having a gun.
Of course, critics are saying, what the heck, you know, you shouldn't be doing drugs and have weapons, and that could lead to all kinds of catastrophes.
Right.
But this is, I mean, what do you make about the fact that it was a unanimous decision?
It's remarkable. This was a loss for Donald Trump, who was defending the law unanimously by these justices. But the justices did make clear, Kira, to your point, that this was a narrow ruling. So their long-standing ban on guns for anybody addicted to drugs, that stands.
Okay.
Anybody who could be a threat to themselves or others, that still stands. Anybody who's presently intoxicated, that still stands. This is simply a rollback of the provision that if you have ever in your life, or maybe once or twice a week, consumed marijuana, millions of Americans do, the court today said the government cannot disarm you and not send you to prison for up to 15 years.
Which is a crazy stance anyway, to even consider that I can be sent to jail because I used marijuana one time while owning a firearm. This is your amendment right. This is a right given to you by the founding fathers of the country. You can't just strip me from a right due to the fact that I have a substance that in certain states is legal. Certain states I can legally have, and it's kind of a sticky situation as well, because what does that lead to other drugs in that same schedule? So if marijuana is still considered Schedule I drug, does that mean that I can have LSD? Can I have ecstasy too? What is it called? Yeah, all those type of drugs too. So, like, maybe this can get held up in court, but as of right now, this is a win for 2A for sure. And long term, be honest with you, I like this because, bro, what the governments will do in certain states is the governments that allow, like, say the states that allow legal marijuana are the same states that do not allow guns. Like my state of Illinois, you can have up to an ounce of marijuana purchased at a time in the state of Illinois. But like he said, you'll get prosecuted if you have a firearm. And the problem is, it's like, okay, so you can't condone in both, but most Americans have it. Now, this is a big thing because if the Supreme Court says it, even for this guy in Texas, because Texas is a red state and they're pro-gun. So any state that's pro-gun is anti-marijuana use. You know what I mean? So it's, same vice versa. Any state that's pro-marijuana is anti-gun. In this instance, anytime, and I want people to understand this, anytime the Supreme Court allows something or they verdict on something and that's their say, it's usually in stone for every state because they're the feds. They're like the top of the feds. So y'all might think the president is control of the country. No, the president is not control of the country. The Supreme Court is. And anything Supreme Court say that's what it is, bro. If they say this, yes. They say that, yes, that's just what it is. And if that applies to one state, it applies to all states. At one stance, we wanted the Supreme Court to look at the AR-15 ban of the state of Illinois. Now, if the Supreme Court says, hey, we can have this firearm, any state can use that jurisdiction for their state too, which means there cannot be a ban on AR-15. So in this instance, if there's not a ban on usage of marijuana federally with the Supreme Courts, no state can enforce that. Now, that doesn't mean that they still can't put that on. I think it's called the 4417. I forgot the number exactly, but this is the piece of paper that you write on when you're purchasing a firearm, and it states are you addicted to certain substances, including marijuana, and then it also adds if So technically speaking, and this is what I was reading about earlier, you cannot technically lie on that piece of paper because then that's a federal offense. But the feds, which are the Supreme Court, are the same ones that say that you can still have one. So I wonder how they're going to define that, because it becomes a sticky situation if you lying on a piece of paper to buy a firearm at the same time the higher power, the Supreme Court, says that they allow it. So they would have to change the wording, because that's how people in my state of Illinois, they get prosecuted because of certain wording that's set in stone. They're like, well, technically this document says this, but this document says that if you lie on this document, you still get prosecuted. So they can still be like, well, you lied on this document, even though this document said that if you abuse it or use it once, you can't have it. So I don't know if it's just best to call it the truth because it's partial true. So it says, are you addicted to like amphetamines, marijuana, or even used it or recreational use? They gonna have to fix that, because what's going to happen is a lot of innocent Americans will be in prison due to this factor. A lot of innocent Americans will be seen like at first they're trying to give you 15 years for this. So it doesn't mean that the state can't still prosecute you. Maybe the feds can't, but then the state can't. And then you have to go through thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight this case just for you can just have your regular freedom that you had originally. It's a sticky situation, I think, and everybody has to understand this. Our country is almost incentivized to finesse us, to keep us in the court system, to use our lawyers, our judge system, to constantly feed the system. So they're going to make rules that they know people are going to break. It's kind of like, instead of banning cigarettes, they increase the tax knowing that you're addicted to cigarettes. They're not going to get rid of the cigarettes. They're just going to increase the tax so they can bring more revenue in, then use that revenue for whatever they feel like bringing it in. Or they're going to put this high tax on marijuana knowing that a lot of people will pay that, and then they hide the tax inside of the price. But most people don't see it like that. They just see it like, oh, I have my freedom. But no, what's going on is that the government's finessing you. They're bringing up false cases so that individuals can feed the system. I find that the same way with divorce. They know that it doesn't take that long to divide assets and all that shit, but they keep it going, because it feeds the judge, it feeds the court, it feeds the lawyers, and then it takes from the person that loses. And this is a sticky situation, like I said, but this is a win for 2A individuals. So if you have a firearm and you happen to just smoke some weed, and you know what I'm saying, they can't really it'll be a fight that the state could possibly lose, so they're not going to pursue it, possibly. But they possibly still could if it goes farther than that. Like, say you in a car and they're like, well, we have records, because when you go into and I tell people this all the time, when you go into weed shops, like I forgot the names of them, but out in Illinois, there's a bunch of weed shops. They all keep track. They scan your ID every time you go in there. They claim that it's just for verification purposes, but obviously they're keeping track of every time you walk in there, which means every time you go on a weed dispensary, they're scanning your ID. They know when you're going in there, which means there's a track record. I guarantee you, if the police, just hypothetically speaking, if they wanted to do background checks on or audit, if the state wanted to audit these marijuana dispensaries for how many people come in here and ran a background on every name, I guarantee you maybe 50% of them own firearms. Does that make sense? I guarantee it for sure. And that's how they could possibly end gun rights or ban a lot of people or put a lot of people in jail for basic usage of marijuana. It doesn't have to be obsessive, addictive. It's just simple use of. You know what I'm saying? And the wording just got recently changed by the DEA for that documentation when buying a firearm, because it used to say if you're addicted to. Now it's used if you singly use or recreationally use. And it's like, oh man. So they're trying to catch you up. And then if you lie about it, they're trying to put you in a hole more. So it's good that the Supreme Court has this, but this is on a federal level. The state could still try to prosecute you on other shit. So it's just a sticky situation. I rather prefer it to be clean. I prefer these people not to finesse us, because they'll take your money from you, but then they'll prosecute you at the same time and try to put you in jail to take away your gun rights. I don't know. I feel like there's a, and then you got to think about why they're taking. Always wonder when you think about situations like this. Always wonder why they're trying to take your gun rights. Are they trying to take it because they have an agenda in the future? They don't want you to fight back later, because you got to think about it. You might not like gun rights because some people misuse it, but your founding fathers of the country said, well, you have the freedom of speech. Number one, you have the freedom of a speech, right? You can say what you want, freedom of press, and then they add freedom of press, freedom of religion on there. It was originally just freedom of speech. And then they said, well, and this is when the founding fathers of the country, they said, well, you have the freedom to bear arm. You have the right to bear arm, to obviously to protect that first freedom. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't want our country to be taken advantage of or taken back the same way we took it, let's say. So that's why I'm so 2A. I'm a pro 2A. And if you like gun content, y'all gotta slide all over the Angelo So Strapped over there at my other YouTube channel, my main page. Y'all click that button below and subscribe right now. Y'all tell me what y'all think about this in the comments section. This is a very interesting subject. I made other videos about this before, and I can carry on about this forever because this is a win for the 2A community. And I see that there's a lot of restrictions going on, at least in my state of Illinois. The Glock has been banned in California. New York City, they giving you time for anything. For real, you can't have, there's a hell of criminals, and they don't want you to be armed at all to protect yourself. And we all know who this doesn't benefit: the law-abiding citizens. So I want you guys to take that in consideration. When your state is banning firearms, they're banning firearms for law-abiding citizens, not the criminals. The criminals are still going to crim. They still got the guns. They're still going to shoot. But now, in this instance, the law-abiding citizen, yeah, you're oblivious to the crime now. Now you just have to take it. If the gunman come up to you, what you gonna do? Fight him? You can't fight him. You don't have a firearm. Anyway, it's your boy Angelo Savage. Tell me what y'all think about this in the comment section. It's the Savage Report. Subscribe below right now. Let's get it. It's your boy Savage. Let's go.